Ayurveda Madam.
A very good morning to all. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Our most respected and honorable guests, it is our great pleasure to have your auspicious presence at this 3-day international webinar on constitutional obligations, values, rights, duties, and responsibilities of the citizens. This webinar is organized by the Department of Political Science, Ramnagar College. We confirm you that the speeches and lectures to be delivered today by the most esteemed scholars and political scientists of international fame must enrich you on the concerned part of political science with its academic value and importance. On the other hand, we also deeply believe that exchange of thought, opinion, and detailed discussion on most relevant issues of this part will definitely bring us the desirous goal to a large extent. Thank you all on the behalf of the Department of Political Science. Now, with the consent of our respected Principal Sir, Sri Ananta Mohan Mishra, we are going to start this webinar. I would request Professor Shamul Paul to kindly say something about the webinar and the department. Sir.
Namaskar. Thank you, all of you. At first, I would like to thank Dr. Ananta Mohan Mishra, Chairman of this webinar and Principal of Ramnagar College, and also thanks Professor Debatos Chakraborty, the first resource person of this webinar from Assam University. And I would like to thank all the students, scholars, participants, and other faculties from different disciplines who are watching the program on YouTube. It is very pleasure to me to introduce our department. The Department of Political Science under Ramnagar College, affiliated by Vidyasagar University, started its journey in the year of 1972 with 6 students and with the general course. Our department introduced honors course on the demand of local students in 2002. Most of the students come from the adjoining area of Ramnagar, and few students comes from the neighboring block of the same district. Now it is grown up department with around 250 students and some efficient and dedicated faculties. There are 2 full-time teachers and 2 SAC teachers in our department. The Department of Political Science not only provide studies, but also organize different extracurricular activities like excursions, departmental picnics, youth parliaments, inter-semester quiz competitions, cultural program to improve their extra knowledge and personalities. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would request Dr. Naranaran Das, Professor of Department of Sanskrit, to enchant few Sanskrit mantras, Mongolacharo, before initiation of this webinar. Sir.
Hari Om. He Gopalaka he Krupa Jalanidhi he Sindhu Kanyapate he Kangsyantakam he Gajendra Vadanam হে বারিণাং মাধব হে রামানুজ হে জগত্রয় গুরু হে পুণ্ডরীকাক্ষ মাং হে গোপী দীননাথ পরং জানামি নত্যং বিনা ॐ कर्पूरगौरं करुणावतारं संसारसारं भुजगेन्द्रहारं सदा वसन्तं हृदयारविन्दे भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवा वशिष्यते ओम शांति देश शांति अंतरिक्ष शांति पृथ्वी शांति श्यामा शांति शांतिरेव च हरि ओम अयमारंभ शुभाय भवतु ओम शांति 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 ओम नमो नमः
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dash. Now, I would request the chairman of this webinar, our principal sir, Dr. Ananta Mohan Mishra, to give his welcome address. Sir.
Good morning to everybody. It is my proud privilege to address before this auspicious galaxy of people connected on the eve of 3 days national international level seminar. The topic of the webinar is constitutional obligations, values, rights, duties, and responsibilities of citizens. So it is the initiative of our political science department, headed by Professor Syamol Pal, Professor Rajesh Patro, and other two teachers. And in this context, I mostly welcome the resource person, those who are going to share their valued opinion, their experience, and at the same time, the organizers, the students, the faculty members of this college and outside the college and others. The topic of the issues that they have selected, I think it is very, very urgent, having its significance not only for the benefit of our students or the faculties, but for the benefit of the total citizens as a whole. Because it was the time when the first constitution was given to the people of our country. Before that, we all people have a long drawn agony and pain because of the ruling of the British, and people didn't have any feelings about the freedom. And it was the nation builder, those taking the responsibilities of introducing our country as a secular democratic republic country, they first give the emphasis on the freedom, because it was completely lack of freedom that the common people have visualized and witnessed over the British ruling of over or nearly 200 years. And as a result, the constitutional, the bonaja, I think, what we common people get, it was the fundamental rights. And at the same time, the constitution also pointed out and earmarked some responsibilities, which in gross sense it was the duties of the citizens, it was the duties or the constitutional duties, and broadly some responsibilities earmarked for the citizen of our country. It was our experience that, particularly during the post-independence era, the country has been developed with different scales on different dimensions. The country which didn't have enough acknowledgement and acceptance at the international level, and the economy, particularly due to the ruling of the British and their exploitation, which was very poor, and our performance was not up to the mark. But due to the independence and the post-independence British administration, the country has been developed a lot. In my opinion, it is not only developed, but there has been some significant achievements, both in terms of economic progress, in terms of developing human rights, both in terms of developing human potentials or human resources. And as a result, now we feel better, and India has got its due accreditation at the international level. The Western countries in particular, those who were not giving us our due importance, but now they have started giving us our performance, our achievements, and our contribution, not only for our nation building, but participating in solving different international problems or issues. India has made its strong impact at the international level. But still the point is that with the common people, we have been aware about fundamental rights, what our constitution has given. But it is very painful that mostly we are not at all aware about our duties and responsibilities. In our experience, we may see that the developed country, they have one of their best potential attributes or feature is that their citizenship. They have their patriotic feelings. They have a very strong attitude for the nation building or making their country up to the mark. But in our country, in my opinion, we didn't score much about on this particular issue. As a result, there have been hue and cry regarding our responsibilities and duties. And lot of difficulties has come across as a result of sheer ignorance about the responsibilities what we are going to discharge or what we are going to provide, not only for me, but mostly for others. We are mostly concerned about personal feelings and personal improvements or personal achievements at the cost of national feelings, neighbors' tear and soil, and at the cost of hard cash or hard resources of our country. If we bridge this gap, mostly we would be very cautious about our rights, it's okay, but at the same time, we have to be very concerned about the responsibilities or duties we have to discharge for our country. It is one of the first goal that we have to fulfill. The today's webinar, which would continue for next 2 days, will discuss different issues pertaining to rights and duties. As there has been some technical peoples having first experience on this particular field, I think it would be quite usual and very decent on their part to share their views on this particular issue, but I will not discuss much more on it. But in broader sense, I am giving a directions or making the trades unfold before the main discussions is going to be happened at the later stage. It is one of the initiative that the Pol Science Department or the Political Science Department of Ramnagar College have been initiated. It has a very urgent significance because with the educated people so far, I think a very few of them have gone through the details of our constitution. So what actually constitution is providing us, the knowledge I think is very, very minimal. Even in my personal experience, I have seen we have so many books in our personal library, but very few people of them, those who have a copy of Indian constitutions. But still, we are talking mostly about our constitutional various issues. We are in the process of discussing so many political and economic activities based on our constitutional directives. But it is very disappointing that we didn't have a minimum knowledge about constitution. And the credit the political science department will claim that they have selected this particular or a fundamental issues, a very primary issues, which I think being neglected, and we are talking most of the other issues giving importance, but this fundamental one are being avoided or being negligibly treated. And their credit is that they have selected this very right subject and very right issue, that we should be educated enough, or we should have minimum knowledge, our citizenship, what our country actually demands, what our country actually deserves, that our individual contribution will make a strong impact for nation building as a whole. And at the same time, it is a very crucial point, I think, that India is not only concerned about its internal issues, rather, India has already established its importance at the international arena, that they have enough capabilities and potential to participate at the international level, giving their high experience and their resources for the betterment of the world economy, world politics, world international relations, so that this broad world will become a home of a universal residence for the people of the entire globe as a whole. I wish this webinar, which is scheduled to be continued for 3 days, starting for this very beginning, will finally reach its desired goal, and the participants and the organizers finally, I think, will get some expected output in terms of knowledge sharing and grooming or developing themselves as they have set their mind. I once again welcome all the resource persons, the teachers, the organizers, the coordinators, and others who, with their different participation and assurance of performing different roles, this endeavor finally will find a grand success. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your valuable words. It is obviously encourageous for all of us. Yes, it is true that being the citizens of a democratic country, we should be conscious about our not only about our rights but also about our responsibilities and duties. For that matter, the topic, the issue is very, very relevant for today. Now, we'll proceed towards the main attraction of today's webinar, and I will like to invite Dr. Devatosh Chakraborty for his lecture. Dr. Chakraborty is an associate professor of Department of Political Science, Assam University. His major area of interests are research methodology, local governance and government, and politics in India. He has completed UGC-sponsored major research project on decentralization and rural governance, a comparative study of Panchayat Raj institutions in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. He published many articles in national and international journals, contributed chapters in edited volumes. Naturally, he has produced many PMPhil and PhD scholars as well. He delivered many talks in various workshops, seminars, webinars, and HRDC faculty development program. I think if I talk about him, it will take a long time. So, sir, on the behalf of the department, I will invite you to initiate your lecture, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is really indeed a pleasure for me to be here with you all, and I wish you all the best. Now, at the outset, I congratulate the Ramnagar College, the principal, and the governing body for initiating such a beautiful program, which I strongly believe that is a necessity. It is a response to the call of the time, because as the principal sir has rightly pointed out that.
Sorry for the interruption, sir. Can you
Yes,
please be a
yes.
little loud? It is low. Your
Okay.
voice is coming. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try. Okay, so at the outset, I welcome you all in this deliberation, and I would like to convey my sincere thanks to the principal of the college as well as the governing body of the college for introducing such a beautiful theme for this seminar, whereby we will be discussing rights and duties, various values associated with our constitution. And in the long run, I feel that these discussions will enrich our students, our participants, and it will disseminate certain information that are very much attached to with our constitution, and it will immensely benefit the students. And such kind of programs, I feel that should be held regularly and should be held on a regular basis. And in the process, we'll be able to develop a kind of national feelings, kind of patriotism among the students, a kind of respect for our constitution. As our principal sir has rightly pointed out, that we can know about the rights, but we need to know about our duties also. And all these topics will be highlighted in this 3-day seminar in the webinar. Now, as I have given the topics to discuss with rights and the Indian constitution, so okay, one thing, can I share my slides here? Can I share my slides?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, let me try.
Yes, sir.
Just look at your screen in the button. There are share option.
Yeah,
Plus.
I clicked share. Yeah.
Yes.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
মাইকটা বন্ধ করি
It is uploading. Just a minute. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Is it visible? It is visible.
So I think all of you can see this thing. Is it okay? Is it okay, sir?
Just
It is
one
not
minute.
seen on the screen.
Yeah.
Just you have to share your screen.
Share again. Again, I have to click share.
Yes. Yes, yes. It is. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So, as I have given the topic to discuss on rights and the Indian Constitution, so my plan here is that I'll divide the entire lecture into three basic things. First, I will try to give you an overview of what right is, because without knowing the theory, you cannot proceed further. So I will not take much time on discussing what is rights and what does it actually mean. Once we complete this an overview of rights, I'll proceed towards the specific things relating to our Indian Constitution, highlighting the various categories of rights available in the Indian Constitution with a primary focus on fundamental rights. And then we'll conclude the discussion. So whenever we talk about rights, you can easily understand that right is something which is very much a cornerstone of a democratic state. We cannot imagine rights without democracy. In a dictatorial country like China, even there are so many hurdles to enjoy our rights, to enjoy the rights of the citizens. And even this concept of rights is not something that is new. If you go back to the Indian ancient time, during the time of Vedas and others, you will find that there is a clear mention of rights, and the women during that time enjoyed huge rights that even today we cannot think of. And so even in the Indian scripture, Mahabharata, you say, refer to Ramayana, you say, you will find there is a strong reference to rights as well as duties. And coming down to the Mughal era and other things, we know that there is certain decline of rights even in the British period. But gradually, when the Indian Constitution came into being, we have got a huge number of rights which till today we are enjoying. So the rights actually exist where democracy exists. And this concept of rights is got an expression in the writings of various scholars. Suppose one of the renowned scholar who has given a lot of contribution in rights is called J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill. And you all know that perhaps that John Stuart Mill wrote a book called On Liberty. And in the book On Liberty, he said that over himself, over his own body and mind, the individual is sovereign. By saying so, he will actually try to restrict the power of the state, because there is always a tendency to curtail the rights of the people, and always a tendency on the part of the state to curtail the rights of the people. Therefore, he said that it is individual is sovereign, and therefore it is the state should interfere minimum in the rights of the individual. Even if you see the writings of Harold Lasky, what he said that rights is nothing but a condition of social life, and without these rights, no man can seek at his best. So to be the best, we need what? We need rights. Even in the writings of T.H. Green and Hobhouse, you will find that they talk about right as a common good. They talk about right as a social welfare, which is required for the social growth. So simply, when we would like to define rights, we can say that rights are nothing but a kind of claim of citizens. And that claim of citizens is required for the society, which actually recognizes the necessity of the individual, as well as it requires I should say, it makes the conducive environment for the upliftment of the people. So if an individual's rights are not protected, he cannot uphold his wishes. So a person can only develop if grounds are there. So the constitution everywhere in all the countries, you will find that constitution has given a detailed rights so that individual can uplift themselves, individual can make the best out of their own things. So it is in this context, when we talk about rights, you will find that it includes certain basic features. Suppose whenever we talk about rights, we need to say that rights are very essential to develop the personality of an individual. It is required because it is a claim of the society as a whole. Rights are required because in case of any kind of infringement, rights need to be protected, and that is why we have judiciary. In a federal country like us, USA, Russia, you will find that judiciary is very active to protect the rights of the citizens. Because if any way our rights are violated, who will be there to protect our rights? It is the judiciary. So any kind of infringement on the rights of the individual need to be protected. And therefore, it is not only the duty of the judiciary, but it should be the duty of the state to protect the rights of the individuals. And also we find that rights are very much dynamic in nature. It is not something static. Over the period of time, when the situation gets changed, when the circumstances gets changed, rights are also gets changed. It is not something fixed. And we must know that every right has a corresponding duty, because rights cannot go without duties. It is very popularly said in political science that rights imply duties. Rights and duties go hand in hand. So when we explain rights, obviously the duties come. That is why even in your syllabus you can find that there is a chapter called fundamental rights and duties. Both these things go together. You cannot enjoy your rights until and unless you respect the rights of others. So this is what we can understand by what right is, what the essential features of right. And whenever we talk about rights, rights can be categorized. You will find in any book. It can be, say, rights can be called natural rights. It can be called moral rights. It can be called legal rights. When we talk about natural rights, you will find the reference of natural rights even in the social contract theory of Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. They were talking about the natural rights, like even they were talking about right to property, right to life. All this they are talking about in terms of natural rights. Even later period, when we find the writings of Jefferson, he was talking about pursuit of happiness. These rights are related to pursuit of happiness. So natural rights has its expression when Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau were explaining the concept of state of nature. Along with that, we have also kind of moral rights. Moral rights is nothing but the human consciousness. And these moral rights cannot be enforced by any law. If any person disrupts your moral rights, no action can be taken. State cannot take action against the violation of moral rights. It is based on our conscience. The protection of our moral rights comes from our conscience. But when we talk about legal rights is something which is recognized. There are statutory rights, there are constitutional rights which are guaranteed by law, and all the rights which are guaranteed by law comes under legal rights. And that is why legal rights, you can classify it as civil rights, political rights, economic rights. And the interesting thing is that when we say civil rights, like say right to life, right to liberty, right to equality, all these civil rights, political rights, when we say right to vote, right to contest elections, right to criticize the government, economic rights like right to work, right to leisure, right to rest, all these are combined. And in some countries, you will find that economic rights are recognized. Some countries you will find that all these civil, political, and economic rights are recognized. In a country like us, in India, you will find that we have a long list of civil rights. We have political rights. We have also some kind of economic rights, though right to work and other things are not prescribed by our constitution, but this concept of economic rights is very much there in our directive principles of state policy. So this kind of rights exist in our constitution also. But when let me gradually proceed to our main part of discussion with this little background. Let me proceed towards our this concept of entire concept of rights in the Indian Constitution. When we talk about Indian Constitution, I would like to categorize it into constitutional rights and fundamental rights so that you can clarify, so that your doubts can be clarified. Now, when we say constitutional rights, what does it actually mean? When we say constitutional rights, you must understand it as that the rights which are not actually a part of the fundamental rights, because you know that fundamental rights are incorporated in part 3 of the Indian Constitution. So other than this part 3 of the Constitution, whatever rights are recognized, these rights are referred to as constitutional rights. So these constitutional rights are also guaranteed by our Constitution. And when we talk about these constitutional rights, and even if your constitutional rights are violated, you can protect your constitutional rights. But it is not like fundamental rights. Constitutional rights are not like fundamental rights. Take an example of right to vote, which is actually clearly talked by this Article 326. You will find that right to vote is not your fundamental right, but it is your constitutional right. It is not mandatory to exercise your right to vote, but it is, as I said, you should feel that you are a part of India. You should feel that it is your duty to cast your vote. So right to vote is very much a constitutional right. Similarly, right to property. Earlier, right to property was a fundamental right, but later on it was deleted and put under Article 300A of the Indian Constitution. So this right to property is what? It is not longer a fundamental right, but this is very much a constitutional right, is very much a legal right. And in case of violation of your right to property, even if you can take help of the constitutional provisions, the judiciary will protect it. So there is a clear distinction between constitutional rights and fundamental rights. So constitutional rights, simple to brief it, constitutional rights are those rights which are other than the fundamental rights. So there can be a list of constitutional rights, and these constitutional rights are very much for us. There are statutory rights very much for us, and there is judiciary to protect our rights. But when we come to the question of fundamental rights and the Indian Constitution, which will be our main part of discussion, you will find that the entire elaboration of fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution is put under Article 12 to Article 35. But this is a special kind of right. That is why it is called a special category of rights. And this special category of rights are called fundamental rights. Now, question is, why is it fundamental? What is the difference? Why is it called so much fundamental in nature? Because these rights are so much fundamental because it's guaranteed and protected under the Constitution. There are special writs available in the Constitution to protect our fundamental rights. These writs are not available for constitutional rights, but these writs are available for our fundamental rights. And these rights are very much called fundamental. It is only because they are essential for the all-round development of the individual. So as I was talking about J.S. Mill, I was talking about Jefferson, Pursuit of Happiness, everything when I was talking about, I was actually referring to this fundamental aspect. That means if the rights are there, and if these rights are not for our upliftment, there is no meaning of incorporating rights in the Constitution. So these special category of rights are there in the Constitution so as to develop our happiness, so as to live a dignified life. Not only dignified life, it is for the all-round development of ours that fundamental rights are specially protected in the Constitution. But we must keep it in mind that these fundamental rights is not something static. It can be amended also. But when we say amended, it is a long list. It will be a separate discussion. Maybe in the next course of discussion, it may take place that in one under what circumstances fundamental rights can be amended. But for your reference only, I would like to say that whatever rights that is incorporated under Part 3, that is amendable as per the verdict of the Supreme Court in 1973 Keshavanandi Bharati case, where it is said that fundamental rights can be amended, but the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be violated. So fundamental rights you can amend, but without violating the basic structure of the Constitution. And at the same time, we should keep it in mind that whatever rights we are enjoying under Part 3 of the Constitution, we must remember that these are not absolute right. Rather, these rights are subject to reasonable restrictions. And what will be that reasonable restriction? In course of our discussion, it will come. And also, I must say that these rights are what? These rights are actually a kind of balance between individual liberty and social control. So these rights are given to us, as I said, to develop our personality as well as to maintain harmony in the society, to develop a kind of control. So it is striking a balance between this, our liberty on the one side and social control on the other side. And when we try to analyze the rights, all these rights under mentioned Article 12 to 35, we need to understand what is Article 12, what is Article 13, because many times I found that in many discussions, we start with immediately Article 14, right to equality, etc., which are very much there from class 9, class 10, 11, 12 books. These are available. But when we talk about rights, when we talk about state, because rights and states are very much interrelated, because we enjoy our rights in a democratic state. And therefore, the very Article 12 of our Indian Constitution very nicely elaborated the concept of state, because whenever we read Part 3 of the Constitution, we will find that reference to state has been made a number of times. So we need to understand what state is as per our Constitution. And when we read Article 12, it becomes clear to us. So what is there in Article 12? It says that it has encompassed, it has broadened the vision of state here. And when it says state, it actually includes what? It includes that executive and legislative organs of central and state government. So all the legislative and executive organs of state governments can be put under the term called state. Not only that, Even the local authorities, when we say local authorities, that is municipalities, panchayats, district boards, town committees, etc. This can also be come under state, the concept of state. Not only that, all the statutory or non-statutory authorities, even you can refer to LIC, ONGC, and etc. Even they are being public bodies, they are also coming under the purview of state. Because why the point is there? Because if any such bodies put certain restrictions on the enjoyment of fundamental rights of the individual, we can move the judiciary. So when we say state, it is not the central government or state government alone. All this together broaden the view of state, and any such organs, any such institution violates the fundamental rights of the citizens, we can immediately approach to the court for our protection. And similarly, when Article 12 defines the state, we will come to the Article 13. What Article 13 says is that it tried to define what law is. So state and law. And then what we come to know that what state is, let us know what law are in the Indian Constitution. What does it actually mean here? So it is saying that, Article 13 saying that all laws, whatever laws framed by the government, central or you can say state, all these laws are inconsistent with or in derogation of any of the fundamental rights shall be declared as void. That means if any law which is passed by our parliament, passed by any of the state legislature, in any form, if it violates the rights of the individual, then it can be, you can approach the court and it can be declared as void. And as a result of this, Article 13, what actually we are getting here, important point is that we are getting the doctrine of judicial review, which is mentioned, which Supreme Court exercises under 32 and High Court under 2226. So this entire concept of this judicial review actually originated from this Article 13, because it empowers the judiciary to declare any such law as void if it infringes, if it violates the rights of the individual. So the term law has gotten wider connotation, wider meaning. So when we say wider meaning, what does it mean? That means the term law here includes all the laws that are passed by the parliament, all the laws that are passed by the state legislature, all kinds of ordinances issued, all the order issued, bylaws, rules and regulations, and any kind of notifications, even any custom and usages which has the force of law. All these can be it violates our fundamental rights, it can be declared as void. So here the important thing is that we need to understand that whenever we say law under Article 13, this law is something which can be in the form of order, which can be in the form of bylaw, which can be in the form of regulations, notification, usages, but in whatever form, if it tries to violate the fundamental rights of the citizens, any kind of rights of the citizens, we can approach and we can declare it as void. So this is how Article 12 and 13 proceeds towards our elaboration of what state is and what law is. And immediately we'll find that next comes Article 14 to Article 18, which is, you can say, a base of the Indian Constitution, because a democracy can only survive, democracy can only prosper when it contains the issue of equality. Because you know that from this French Revolution, liberty, equality, fraternity, these three are the buzzwords of democracy. And this concept of equality we can only enjoy. But we must keep it in mind that absolute equality is never possible. But even man-made barriers in equality need to be abolished. And that is why right to equality clearly gives importance to remove all the man-made barriers, and it is clearly outlined from Article 14 to 18 of the Constitution. And you perhaps, because I know that in Wbiner many of the students are attending this, so perhaps you have studied from your HS level even that Article 14, which talks about equality before law, equal protection of law. Article 15, which talks about eliminating discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, creed, etc. Article 16 talks about opportunity in public employment. Then Article 17 talks about removing untouchability, which was one practiced in India. And Article 18 talks about abolition of titles. That means like the Jamindari system, we had titles. So that kind of titles we cannot bear, but certain things are there in the Indian Constitution whereby some exemptions are there. So my intention here is that if I go by analyzing each and every article by going into the Supreme Court verdict and others. By 1 hour, it is impossible to complete this entire fundamental rights because it is such a tricky things. Entire constitutional debates and discussions, lot of cases are there relating to fundamental rights. So I'll touch on these points, but my focus will be on certain aspects like what are the exceptions. We have these rights, we enjoy these rights, but we must know that this enjoyment is not something absolute. This enjoyment has certain limitations. So this aspect of limitations I will try to highlight along with the mentioning of these various articles and fundamental rights. Now, when we say exceptions, now right to equality has certain exceptions. Suppose we are talking about equality, but I said that absolute equality is not possible. So if you see these exceptions, you will find that being the head of the state, president, governor, then these executives called MPs and MLAs, they enjoy certain immunities which a common citizens cannot enjoy. So there are certain immunities they enjoy on the floor of the house. Being the head of the state, president enjoy a lot of immunities. You can open up a book, you can find all details are there. Civil cases cannot be put against them while they are in office. Like that, so many immunities they are enjoying. So when we say immunities means what? That means they are enjoying certain special facilities. So it is a violation of equality in one sense. But we must keep in mind that this sort of little bit of privileges given by the Constitution so that their honor and dignity is maintained. Then you will find that very interesting is referring to the Article 13C, which are very much related with Article 14. Very interesting thing you can see, which clearly says that laws made by the state for implementing any of the directive principles of state policy, which is put under clause B and C under Article 39, cannot be challenged on the ground that they are violating Article 14. That sort of things you need to understand when you are understanding fundamental rights, not simply to understand what is Article 14 and 15. That means what? When certain laws are made on the ground of clause B and clause C of Article 39, and when this is made and in any way it is a kind of violation of Article 14, you cannot declare this void, because it is provided in the Constitution under Article 13C that which empowers the state to make certain laws for the welfare of all. And that is why it is said that, very nicely it is said that when and where Article 13C comes in, Article 14 goes out. Very interesting thing. So that means whenever laws are made under Article 13C, the rights of the citizens that we are enjoying under Article 14, some of the rights like equality before law and etc., like discrimination. So certain kind of things can be checked under Article 13C because these laws are made for the welfare of a vast sections of the people. So these things we need to understand. Then we must say that state is also empowered to make special provision for the women, for the children, for the SCs, for the STs, that is provided under Article 16C and others. Because we know that in our society there are certain sections of people who are marginalized. Women are marginalized, children are also marginalized. It is said that scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are also marginalized. So to put them in the equal stretcher, to put them in the equal platform, the Constitution has given them certain special privileges. So it is, we can call it as a positive discrimination. It is not a negative discrimination. Rather, we must say that it is a kind of positive discrimination, because so that they can come up to the general level. But though there may be debate, there may be discussions on the issue of giving them economic rights, giving them more and more facilities, kind of caste-like reservation need to be avoided. That is a different story. That is a different platform to discuss. But here we are trying to point out that these facilities for the socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, for that is from SCs categories and STs categories, are enjoying certain special benefits. And when if you see simply, it is actually a violation to Article 14, because Article 14 says that all are equal, but they are not equal because they are enjoying special facility. So it is said that it is a kind of positive discrimination. It is discrimination is because to uplift them, to make them up to the general level so that they can compete with all the people. Now, to what extent it is successful or not, that is a different kind of debate. Similarly, you will find that the state is permitted to make special provisions For the economically weaker sections, that is obviously non-creamy category, many of you perhaps enjoying the non-creamy category benefits, that is given to the people who are economically backward, and also by terms of their caste, they are also backward, so they are enjoying this. And very recently, you know that under the Modi government, by 103rd Constitution Amendment Act 2019, a special provision, a special privilege has been given to another category of people who are economically weaker. But this is done irrespective of the caste. Any person can apply for economically weaker sections category and can enjoy certain benefits from the government. So this is all this ST reservation for women, facilities for the children, for the economically weaker sections, for the OBC, these kind of rights, this kind of special equality they are enjoying, and which is termed as I already said, positive discrimination. And as I was mentioning about the abolition of titles, you will find that we have the titles like Bharat Ratna, Padma Vibhushan, many such titles are there. For the military people, there are Paramveer Chakra. Even for the academic degree, we have a doctorate degree. So these are also a kind of title. But these titles are not something which is exempted by the constitution. So like during the Jamindari period, Lord, Sir, this kind of titles are not accepted yet. So these Bharat Ratna, Padma Vibhushan, other kind of academic degrees are allowed, whereby people can achieve that degree by means of their quality, and they can enjoy certain things. So these are the exceptions made to Article 14. When I say this exception, there are many more things to discuss, but as time will not permit, we have to cover the entire things. So I have to proceed to the next part of our discussion, which is under Article 19 and 22, which is very popularly called right to freedom, mentioned in our Constitution. So when we say right to freedom, keep it in mind that, as I was saying, that liberty, equality, fraternity, all these things are existing in our country in a democratic state. So liberty here means freedom. Without freedom, a person cannot live. Without these rights, you cannot flourish your personality. You cannot achieve what you are. We cannot achieve our dignified life. We cannot achieve a dignified life without these rights. That is why Article 19, first of all, categorized it into 6 freedoms. Earlier it was 7, as we said, one is deleted. So now we have freedom of speech and expression, we have freedom of assembly, we have freedom of association, we have freedom of movement, we have freedom of residence, we have freedom of professions, and these are there mentioned in Article 19 of the Constitution. But keep it in mind that when we say about freedom of speech and expression, it is something huge, and our Supreme Court, through its various judgments, has expanded the purview of freedom of speech and expression. So when we say freedom of speech and expression, it is not simply a term. Rather, freedom of speech and expression is a term which is actually the, you can say, the base of our democratic state. We, the citizens, enjoy the speech, enjoy to say something. We are expressing our mind only because we exist in a democratic state. Just take an example of China. Even Facebook was banned there, earlier banned. Even today it is banned. You cannot express your mind. You cannot express your thought. You cannot express your abilities, intelligibility before the media, because it is restricted by the government. But here in India, you can see how absolutely we are enjoying our freedom of speech and expression. And we will find that Supreme Court, through its various judgments, has actually extended this purview of freedom of speech and expression. So when we say freedom of speech and expression, we must remember that it not only includes speech and expression, it also includes freedom of press. It also includes freedom to know about government activities. You know that right to information we are talking about. This right to information originates from this freedom of speech and expression. Because when you, simple thing is to that, when you are to speak your mind, you need information. Without information, how will you express yourself? So that is why you need to know the government activities. So right to information is there to know the various kind of activities initiated by the government. Only when you know all these things, only when you have information about all these things, you can explore, you can prosper, you can excel your personality. So it includes freedom of press, it includes right of you to know about the government activities. It includes, you can say that a kind of, you can say, right to privacy also include here. Suppose there is a point called this: government has no monopoly on electronic media. Nowadays, electronic media goes on exposing various government schemes because it has got the freedom of expression. So you will find that there is a right called right against Bandh, because everywhere, even in West Bengal, in other parts of India, we have a Bandh culture, strike culture. So even this strike goes against your freedom of speech and expression, because when you have the right to exercise your freedom of speech and expression, you have to do certain things. Suppose a particular day you are going somewhere to give a speech and there is a strike, so everything is banned. That means it is a violation of your rights. So even you can say that freedom of, very interestingly, so Supreme Court said that freedom of silence, even if you want to keep silence, this is also your right. Freedom of silence is also there, which you can know, which you can enjoy under this expression. So this freedom of speech and expression is not something a very narrow, rather it is a broadened, it is a dynamic one, it is goes on expanding. Even right to propagate one's views, always views of others. So if you want to propagate the views of others, you are listening to somebody and you want to listen and then you want to write on that things, that is also a kind of expression. So freedom of speech expression, like assembly, association, movement, and residence, is something which is, you can say, that cornerstone of our democratic state. Similar to that is called Article 20. Article 20 is what? Article 20 is all about three important things, where we are talking about protection, where we are talking about protection in respect of conviction of offenses. And when we talk about this conviction, we can categorize into three things. These three things are what? Number one, no ex post facto law, no double jeopardy, and no self-incrimination. What does it mean? Let me explain first. The first one is called no ex post facto law. What is related to Article 20? It is said that if any person is convicted, except for violation of a law in force at the time of the commencement of the crime. So suppose where you have committed a crime, you will be convicted for the offense. You will be convicted for the offense for the violation of that law only. The law which will come in future, for that you will not be convicted. Likewise, you are subjected to a penalty greater than prescribed by the law in force at the time of the commencement of the act. That means when you are committing a crime, when you are committing certain thing, and if it is proved, you will be punished under the law that is existed. So under the law that is existed, you will be punished. Similarly, when we say no double jeopardy, it means what? No person shall be prosecuted and punished for the same offense more than once. So you cannot be punished for more than once for the same crime. And no self-incrimination means what? That means no person accused of any offense shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. Because you know that it is a very vast right, because many times you earlier perhaps gone through various news report that police do third-degree torture. There are so many tortures takes place in custody. So it is said by the Constitution that no person can be accused of any offense and he cannot be compelled to be a witness against himself. So you cannot be compelled to be a witness against yourself. So that is why this gradually further expanded, and there when you are arrested, there are so many procedure now, so that this sort of things are avoided. So Article 20 is a detailed one which gives us the right to get some sort of protection in respect of conviction for some kind of offenses. Similar to that is another vast article, that is Article 21, which talks about protection of life and liberty. And here interesting thing is that protection of life and personal liberty is a simple thing, but there are so many public interest litigation cases filed, a number of cases filed on Article 21. And it is such a dynamic right that it is going on expanding and expanding. It is not simply a personal liberty and protection of life. Rather, it includes a lot of things. Some of the examples I have just put it here. But before that, let me tell you, this protection of life and personal liberty, if you refer to a case called Menaka case in 1978, whereby Supreme Court, because you know that in India there are two concepts, procedure established by law and due process of law. Due process of law is a broader concept which is actually exists in the Constitution of US. But in India, we basically follow procedure established by law. But even then, Supreme Court says that many of its judgment while judging this judging this Article 21, it has actually gradually inherited this concept of due process of law, and saying that it is trying to judge the merit of the law. It is trying to judge whether the law is fair and just or not. And that is why if you see the judgment of the Supreme Court in various ways, you will find that this right to personal liberty and life has expanded. And even today, you can say that examples I have given here: right to livelihood, right to privacy, right to shelter, right to health, right to free legal aid, right to speedy trial, information, right to freedom from noise pollution, right to sleep, right to live with human dignity, many more. So all these, you can see, these rights that we are enjoying today, it is actually coming under Article 21. That is what the last point here is very important, that right to live with human dignity. Merely living is not enough. You have to live a dignified life. That is important. And this dignified life comes when your environment is peaceful, when your surrounding is peaceful, when even when you are disturbed, you are not having a sound sleep, it is also a violation to your right to life. Therefore, even a speedy trial, if you are arrested, you need a speedy trial even. So all these things are incorporated in our constitution by various judgment, and thereby protection of life and personal liberty has expanded in a great way. And because of this expansion, gradually, you know that under this Article 21, another clause has been added that is called Article 21A, right to education. So right to education has become our fundamental right, because it is important for the state to provide education. And you know that education for all, Sarva Shiksha Mission, everything actually originated from this Article 21A. Similar to that is Article 22, which talks about protection against arrest and detention. So this is a very interesting one, because there are a lot of discussion originates from this Article 22, that is, we have reference to preventive detention, but it is a separate chapter. We are not going into that. Here, I would like to mention that when you are arrested for some reason, under Article 22, it is said that right to be informed. If you are arrested, your close people, your nick and kin, yourself need to be informed what is the ground of your arrest. Not only that, you have the right to consult and be defended. You have the right to consult to your lawyer, and you have the right to consult your lawyer, and you need to defend your rights. Not only that, right to be produced before a magistrate within 24 hours. That means when you are arrested, it is your right to be produced before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours, and that a kind of writ, habeas corpus under Article 32 comes here. So if you are arrested, it is the duty of the police to be produce you before the nearest magistrate within the 24 hours. And not only that, right to be released within 24 hours unless the magistrate authorizes further detention. So if the police want to have your detention for further period of time, for 2 days, for 3 days, they need to take permission from the magistrate with sufficient ground. And if sufficient ground is there, magistrate can extend your detention. Otherwise, we need to be free within 24 hours once we are produced before the court. And once we are produced before the court, this is actually done under habeas corpus. So one thing we need to remember here is that there are also certain exceptions. We must remember that this right to freedom is subject to reasonable restrictions. It is not something absolute. These reasonable restrictions comes from where? This reasonable restriction is put because the state has got the right to restrict some of our rights on the ground of public order, on the ground of morality, on the ground of contempt of court, defamation, etc. So it is the state that can restrict us if there are certain issues emerge. So on the ground of protection of the country, on the ground of sovereignty of the state, on the ground of protection of the public order, the state can restrict our certain rights. Then comes, once we have a discussion on this Article 22, next comes Article 23 and 24, which talks about right against exploitation. When we say right against exploitation, Article 23 and 24 becomes very relevant, because Article 23 states that traffic in human beings and beggar and other similar forms of forced labor are prohibited. So no kind of beggar means kind of selling of people, no kind of, you can say, traffic in human beings are allowed under the Indian Constitution. And that is why I have given the reference to certain acts like Bonded Labor System Abolition Act 1976, the Contract Labor Act 1970, Equal Remuneration Act 1976. Like that, there are many acts, these acts are actually passed to give protection to this kind of people who are being regularly facing the traffic and other things. So prohibition of traffic in human beings and beggar is all forms prohibited under the Indian Constitution. And not only that, very interesting thing is Article 24. which actually ban the employment of children in factories and all kinds of hazardous jobs. Now here interesting thing is what? That is the expansion of this Article 24. As we in the second slide said that rights are dynamic in nature. Here you can see in 2006, government has further amended and it said that employment of children even as a domestic servant, as a worker in business organizations, in hotels, in davas, in restaurants, in shops, in all kinds of jobs, if you put children, it is punishable offense and it is strictly prohibited. And that is why the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Amendment Act 2016 came into being, which actually amended the Child Labor Act 1986. So Child Labor Act 1986 was protecting children only from the hazardous jobs. But this Child Labor Amendment Act in 2016 is protecting children to be employed in any restaurants, dhavas, even as a domestic worker. So you can imagine how the broad expansion of this Article 24 is now today. And many cases are filed on the ground of that children are employed in, because you know that children should get free and compulsory education up to the age of 14. So if you are putting children under this kind of jobs, they are deprived of education. So this is a violation of his or her fundamental rights. That is why this Child Labor Amendment Act 2016 came into being. Then comes Article 26 to 28, which is actually makes the kind of, you can say, put a secular fabric to our Indian constitution. That is called right to freedom of religion, which is also a very vast, which is also a various small provisions are there in these articles, all these articles, which need to be focused, which need to be understood by the students so that we can understand the intricacies associated with fundamental rights. Now, what Article 25 says? It talks about freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion, and which is available to citizens as well as non-citizens. That means here in India, being the Indian citizen, we have the right to propagate any religion. You have the right to practice any religion. You have the right to profess any religion. Whatever religion you choose, if you want to change your religion, you can change it. No one can put you a restriction, but it cannot be forceful. If somebody forces you to change your religion, that is a crime, that is a violation of your rights. But on your own, if you want to change, on your own, if you want to profess, practice and propagate any religion you like, you are allowed to do so under the Constitution of India. Similar to that is called Article 26. Article 26 talks about what? Freedom to manage religious affairs. When we say freedom to manage religious affairs, what does it actually mean? That means the sections of the people have got the right to manage their own religion. There are many religious matters which are available in the Indian Constitution. That kind of religious affairs that is there in our Constitution, that is there in our society, that need to be protected. Now, how to protect it? How to protect it? Now, point here is that this article gives the right to religious denomination. When you say religious denomination, that means, as I said, there are some sects within the Hindu religion, for example, who have their certain special way of rituals, certain special way of performing their things. So they are protected under this Article 26. Now, when we say religious denomination, this religious denomination is not certain fixed. There are certain conditions. There are certain conditions imposed by the Supreme Court of India. There are certain condition is there which is required to declare itself as a religious denomination group. For example, it should be, means if you claim that you are a denomination, you have to maintain these three things. One is that it should be a collection of individuals who have a system of beliefs which these people regard as conducive to their spiritual well-being, number one. It should have a common organization too, and it should be designated by a distinctive name. And under these three conditions, Ramakrishna Mission, Anand Marg, they declared themselves as religious denomination, and their declaration was accepted. So when you have a collection of individuals, when you have a common organizations, and when you have a designated name, you can be declared as a denomination group and you can manage your own religious affairs. That is important under Article 26. You can manage your own religious affairs. Similar to that is Article 27, which says that freedom from taxation for promotion of a religion. That means no one can be compelled to give any tax. If somebody compel you to give any tax for the promotion of his or her religion, it is strictly prohibited. It is a punishable offense. Many a times you know that even during huge festivals like Durga Puja, the Dandiya and other things, the people are compelled to pay certain tax. But if somebody approached the court, if somebody approached the judiciary, that his violation, with the proof that his violation has taken place, action can be initiated. But if certain things are voluntary, if you voluntarily give any amount of money to any organization, anything, it is no harm. But no one can be, the point here is that no one can be compelled to pay any tax. That is protected by our constitution. Then you can see 28, another right that which we are enjoying is called freedom from attending religious instructions. That is very interesting. Here, further elaboration I have made, if you can see. When we say religious instruction, why to give this religious instruction? There is a ban, there is a restriction imposed. Now, here to analyze it, we need to know that there are 4 types of educational institutions. To understand this Article 28, we need to understand 4 types of educational institutions. Number 1, say, institutions which are wholly managed and funded by the state. Second, institutions which are administered by the state but established under any trust or endowment. Number 3, institutions that are only recognized by the state. And number 4, institutions receiving grant or aid from the state. These 4 categories of institutions we have, educational institutions, for example. Now, what will happen here? Suppose in category A is institutions which are maintained by the state, no religious instruction is allowed. So any government schools, any government university, colleges, no religious instruction is allowed. It is completely prohibited. In category B, that is administered by the state but established under any fund, under established any trust, instruction is permitted. Here instruction can be given. But in category C and D, it is said that where only the institutions recognized by the state and institution getting some kind of grant from the state, here you can provide instructions on a voluntary basis. That cannot be random. Certain situations on voluntary basis, instructions can be given, religious instructions. But in a government aided, maintained by the state, no instructions is allowed. That is important matter to understand. So here, when we say this freedom of religion, we need to understand that this is also not absolute. It has also certain exceptions, certain situations are there which you need to understand. Suppose Article 25, it is what? It is also subject to reasonable restrictions. And these reasonable restrictions is on the ground of, as I said earlier, public order, morality, health, and other provisions that is relating to fundamental rights. So not only this health, morality, and order, but if these are violating any of the fundamental rights, then there can be reasonable instructions, restrictions can be imposed. But in case of Article 26, you can see these are also subject to public order, morality, health, but not subject to other provisions relating to fundamental rights. That means in case of Article 26, in some way it contaminates with other issues of fundamental rights, then it cannot be reasonable, restrictions cannot be imposed. But in case of only public order, morality, and health, restrictions can be imposed by the state. Likewise, for economic matters, for financial, for political or other secular activity associated with religious practice, state can impose restrictions, can regulate it. So in any way, if your activity, if the activity of an institution, if the activity of an individual is jeopardizing, is hampering the economic aspect, hampering the political aspect, hampering the secular aspect, then it can be, restrictions can be imposed. Here another thing we need to remember is that in case of any kind of social welfare and reform, the state can make open Hindu religious institution of a public character. So this has happened in South many a times. Many of the other areas, Bihar and UP also. What happened is that, as we are talking about untouchability earlier, many of the untouchables were not allowed to enter into the temples. So in case of these things, the provision is that for social welfare and reform, the state can make Hindu religious institutions open, because this will be made open so that all classes and sections of citizens can take part and worship the temple. And when it is defined as Hindus, you keep it in mind that Hindu is not just a term; it is a very broad term as per the Supreme Court version, and it is including the Sikh community, Jain community, and Buddhist community when it is explaining the term called Hindu. Even the Sikhs, you can know that even the Sikhs has got the right to wear and carry kirpan, and it is recognized. It is recognized because it is their religious symbol, they have to maintain it under their religious instructions. So they are allowed to do so. So these kind of exceptions are there, but we can remember that these are not absolute. Reasonable restrictions are there. Under these reasonable restrictions, we can enjoy our freedom of religion. Then the two other important rights left. One is cultural and educational rights, which is mentioned under Article 29 and 30, and then Article 32. Now, Article 29, as I said, that you can read it out, which is actually for a section of citizens who are having a distinct language, who are having a distinct script, culture of its own. They can have the right to conserve the same. They can have the right to protect the same. So we, the citizens of India, enjoying this right, if we are having a different language, an endangered language, a distinct language, a script, a culture, we can protect our rights under Article 29. Not only that, it is provided, this article provides that no citizen can be denied of admission in any educational institution which is getting grant from the state, and on the basis of your religion, on the basis of your caste, language, etc., you cannot be deprived of admission in any of the state-run educational institution. Nowhere it can be done. It is strictly prohibited. And therefore, its objective is to do what? Its objective is to protect both the religious and linguistic minorities in maintaining their language and culture. So whoever the linguistic minority, whoever the religious minority, they are in India, they have got the right to protect and preserve their language and culture. But very interesting observation has been made by the Supreme Court here. What is that observation? This term called sections of the citizens, I have highlighted here. By the term sections of the citizens, Supreme Court says that it is not a limited term, rather it is a broad term. So when we say sections of the citizens, it is not for the minority only, but if situation emerges, it can be for the majorities also. This is a very, very interesting observation by the Supreme Court, that this, when we say sections of the citizens under Article 29, yes, minorities are there, designed for the minorities, but it does not mean that majorities are deprived. Majorities can also preserve their language and culture if situation emerges like that. And also you'll find that there is you all know that perhaps there is a Representation of the People's Act 1951, under which elections and everything takes place. And during election, you know that we cannot make any such comment which can hurt the sentiment of the people. We cannot make such comments to, you can say, make your voters sentimental to vote for you. But if some citizens, if some politicians, if some persons who are giving, you can say, certain speeches relating to preserve of their language, preserve of their culture, preserve of their certain things, it cannot come under the Representation of the People Act called corrupt practices. So if you are, suppose, polarizing, you are in the election, people ask for vote, they polarize the voters by in terms of religions and other things. So this is called a corrupt practice under Representation of the People's Act. But if somebody is in a political speech mentioning to protect his or her own language and culture or his own distinct script, it cannot be put under corrupt practices. These exceptions is also made. Then comes Article 30, which is also for the minorities, both religious and linguistic minorities, who have the right to administer and establish educational institutions of their choice. So those who are minority people in India, they have got the right, linguistic minority or religious minority, they have got the right to establish and administer their educational institution which they like. Because if it is not allowed, then their personality, their education, their culture, their script will not be promoted. That is why it is given. But also it is provided that, which is actually added by the 44th Constitution Amendment Act 1978, that in case of confiscation, in case of taking away of the property of any minority educational institution, proper compensation, it is said that the compensation amount fixed by the state for the compulsory acquisition of any property of a minority educational institution shall not restrict the right granted to them. So even a compensation and other things can be provided, but whatever the rights they enjoy, they will go on enjoying their rights, and this is added by the 44th Constitution Amendment Act. And the state shall not discriminate against any educational institution managed by a minority. So if the educational institutions which are being managed by a minority group, whether religious or linguistic, state cannot make discrimination. But While defining all these things, one interesting thing, another, you can say loopholes also, that the term minority is nowhere defined in the Constitution. The protection under Article 30 is confined to minorities only. But what does minority mean? Because here, interesting comment I would like to make. In some states, some people are minority, other states, these minority people are majority. In one particular place, if you go, in a particular state, if you go, or a particular region, if you go, you will find that a kind of people are there, they are minority here. But this minority in another place, they are majority. Throughout India, these things goes on. So what is that concept of minority exactly? That kind of definition is not there. But minority educational institutions for the over the period of time has been found, and these has been categorized into three types. Three types of minority educational institutions are there, whereby rights of the minorities are preserved. What are those? Number one, institutions that need recognition from the state, that need aid from the state. Aid means here grant from the state. So institutions that need recognition as well as grant from the state, number one. Second category of states are institutions are there which need only recognition from the state and no grant. Number three, institutions that seek only recognition, neither recognition nor aid. So three category. One is recognition as well as aid. Second one is only recognition, not aid. Third one is no recognition, no aid, nothing they want. So if these three categories of institutions are present, what is the criteria here? That is, the categories A and B are subject to the regulatory power of the state. So for these minority educational institutions under category A and B, regarding their syllabus preparation, regarding their employment, regarding their equipment of staff, regarding their academic standards, state has a role to play. But while the question of third category comes, the state has a very limited role to play. State will not intervene in its academic standards. But this third category of educational minority institutions normally are subject to the laws like contract law, there are labor laws, there are tax laws. These laws, these institutions are subject to. But category 1 and category B, in this case, the state will intervene to promote its academic standards. So we must say that this right to establish and administer educational institution is not something absolute. Rather, these are also subject to regulatory measures by the state. So something it is not always absolute. It is also under regulatory measures by the state. And finally comes Article 32, which is also known as the soul of the Indian Constitution as per Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This Article 32 is also known as fountain of justice. You can only get justice only when you have Article 32. And this Article 32, if you want to understand, you need to understand is that the right to move the Supreme Court for the enforcement of fundamental rights. So Article 32 gives us, or gives all the citizens, the right to move the highest judiciary to protect our fundamental rights. Now, one thing we need to understand that we have all these rights from Article 14 to Article 30. But if we are not able to protect these rights, then what will be the justification of having this long list of rights? Therefore, Article 32 is empowering us all that we can protect our rights, we can approach the judiciary under Article 32 Supreme Court and under Article 226 to High Courts to protect our fundamental rights. So here one important thing, you keep it in mind that whenever we need to protect our fundamental rights, for the violation we have to move straightway to High Court or to Supreme Court. But any of your constitutional rights are violated, you can move to the district court, session judge court, and then you can go ahead. Like that the practice. But for fundamental rights, special facilities are provided. Number two is what? This is very important, that right to constitutional remedies actually incorporate certain writs. You can call it writs, orders, directions, which are termed as habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, and quaranto. These 5 writs are actually important for the protection of our fundamental rights. Habeas corpus, already I said that it literally means to have a body. So if somebody is illegally detained, if somebody is detained for some reasons, then to have a body means he or she will be produced before the court and magistrate will judge whether detention can be extended or not, and under this rate he or she can be released free. When we say mandamus, it literally means what? It means we command. Literally means we command. This writ actually issued when? This writ is issued by the court, like Supreme Court or High Court, to ask a public official to perform his public duty which he is not performing. So if a public official is not performing his duty, then under this mandamus, he or she, this public official, can be asked to perform his duties. But when we come to the question of prohibition, it means what? Literally means, prohibition literally means to forbid. What does it actually mean? It means this writ can be issued to a subordinate court, or you can say call it as a tribunal or a subordinate court, so that it prevent the subordinate court from exceeding its jurisdiction. So if a subordinate court is extending its jurisdiction, is doing something for which it is not entitled, this writ can be issued by the highest court, by the judiciary, to the subordinate court to restrict its activities. But we keep it in mind that this is not available against administrative authorities, not available against legislative bodies, not available against any private individual. So this prohibition is not available for private individuals, not for legislative bodies, not for any administrative authorities. Rather, this is available for the subordinate court if it does something which is beyond its jurisdiction. Likewise, another one is called certiorari. What does this certiorari means? Literally, it means to be certified. Now, what actually it means is that this writ is issued by a higher court to a lower court, as I said, subordinate court, or even a tribunal, either to transfer a case which is pending with it for a long time, and or it can ask the subordinate court to transfer the case to the higher court, or it can ask to squash the case. That means certiorari writ is what can be issued to a subordinate court by the High Court or the Supreme Court, so that it can transfer a case which is pending with it, or to squash means dismiss the case which is pending with it, or you can say simply if the court transfer it to the higher court, then this can be done. So certiorari is against the activities of a subordinate court if it keeps a particular case pending for a long time. And finally comes quo warranto. It is a kind of, you can call it an injunction. What does it mean? Literally, it means by what authorities or warrant. This is literal meaning. Now, what does it mean? That means this writ can be issued by the court to a public office. On what ground? To prevent any illegal assumptions of public office by a person. Many times we know that under this, so many cases are filed in the Supreme Court or High Court. Suppose you are going for an appointment, you are going for an interview. You have appeared in an interview, you found that you are eligible, and you have become number one. And you, for some reason, you came to know that no, another person has been given priority, has been given preference, and you were deprived. Immediately you can move the judiciary, and kind of injunction can be, we usually call it as a stay order. A kind of these things can be issued under this quo warranto, whereby a person can be prevented to occupy a public office for which he or she is not entitled. This is what quo warranto means. So these 5 writs is a special writs only to protect our fundamental rights, and fundamental rights will be meaningless, will have no justification if these writs are not available to us. And Parliament can empower any other court to issue directions. So if situation emerges, if Parliament by discussion can empower other court to have these writs, presently it is not there. And finally, what we can say is that this right to move the apex court shall not be suspended, except, so normally it cannot be suspended, only when Article 359 and emergency is declared, then this Article 359, when it is used, then the right of the people to move the judiciary can be suspended, but otherwise it can never be suspended, it will remain there. So it is almost more than an hour, so I need, because from 12 another session will start, it's almost getting 12, 11:59, I think I need to conclude here. So my concluding remarks will be that what? That we have discussed from the very first slide to these slides, the long slides are there, almost 17 slides I have completed. Now, what the crux of all my discussion is that we have the rights in a democratic state like us. We enjoy these rights to develop our personality. We enjoy these rights to live a dignified life. We realize these rights. We have to obey these rights. And not only that thing, what important, the note of the principle that I again recall, that you need to maintain your duties. When we have the rights, we are very much aware of our rights many a times, but we are not aware of our duties. Suppose a simple example. I have the right, a simple example, I have the right to listen music at night. So I am listening music at night, but I have no right to disturb others who need right to sleep. So my listening to music is my, for example, a basic right, for example, but this right should not infringe the right of others. I need to be very aware of it. Suppose many times you will find that here it is a lot of disturbance in many of the places. People start worshipping God and they use microphones, they use high decibel sounds, and it creates disturbance for others. That is what? That means they are not respecting the rights of others. So that is why we say that when we know our rights, we should know duties. When rights and duties are obeyed together, then only a smooth environment, then only a democracy can prosper. So rights and duties, as I started with this, imply rights imply duties, and both rights and duties go together, go hand in hand. Without rights, we cannot enjoy our duties. Without duties, we cannot enjoy our rights. And that is why a long list of 11 fundamental duties are incorporated in our Indian Constitution, so that people should know that these are my rights and these are my duties, and we should emphasize on both aspects. Therefore, when we are aware of our fundamental rights, we should be aware of our fundamental duties also. So in a nutshell, when we say rights in the Indian Constitution, keep it in mind that not only the fundamental rights, there are also a series of constitutional rights. All these constitutional rights are available to us. Along with these constitutional rights, fundamental rights are also available to us. And what are these differences and everything that we already discussed, and we should keep it in mind. And with that note, let me thank once again the organizer, the governing body, and one and all who are behind making this webinar a grand success. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very, very much for the wonderful lecture you have just delivered. We are actually enriched by listening to you. It's not only those persons who are related to political science subject, but also all the others who are the responsible citizens of this country should know about all his responsibilities and duties along with the right. So thank you once again. Now I will request Rajesh Patro, Assistant Professor of Political Science Department, Ramnagar College, to give the formal thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Very good known to all. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this session. I would like to thank our chief guest, Dr. Devotos. Dr. Devotos Chakraborty, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, Assam University. The topic is Indian Constitution and the right to the citizen. Sir, speak about various rights and difference between constitutional rights and fundamental rights, and elaborate details about fundamental rights of our constitution, and tells about how we our rights and duties as well, which is very valuable and knowledgeable to us. So thank you, big thanks, sir, for your contributions and time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, one and all. So may I leave now? Thank you, one and all. May I leave
Yes,
now?
sir. As your
Yes,
choice.
sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
As your choice.
Now we will start the second session, second part of this session, and for that I would request Dr. Siddhartha Shankar Manna to deliver his lecture. Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes, yes. Am I
Okay,
audible?
okay.
Am I
Yeah,
audible?
you are audible. Just give me
Okay.
a very short introduction of yourself. Dr. Manna, he at present is an as assistant professor of Gaurbanga University, Malda. He did his graduation in Midnapur College under Vidyasagar University. Did his masters from Kolkata University. Did his MPhil from Calcutta University and PhD from Vidyasagar University. His area of interest is the analysis of institutional relations, political theory, democratic politics, and human development. He has presented more than 20 papers in national and international seminars, published his articles in books and journals as well. Also, he is a visiting faculty of University of Ruhuna, Sri Lanka. So, of course, it will take again a lot of time if I say more about Sir. So, I'll just give the brief introduction of him, and I will invite Sir to deliver his lecture. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your introduction, and I am grateful to you and your college authority and respected chairperson of the seminar, uh, Principal Sir Dr. Ananta Mohan Mishra, and Shamal Pal. Shamal is the student of our department. He completed his MPhil degree from our department, and he invited me to give a lecture on the topic um, that is rights of role of Indian judiciary and protection of citizens' right. It is very important uh, topic for us that Indian judiciary most important because since our independence we are enjoying the liberty, we are enjoying the different kinds of the constitutional rights. If government or state violate the that type of the rights, then we can take the immediate step against the decision. What Devotos Babu was talking about the different kinds of articles written postulated in the Indian Constitution, and also Principal Sir Ananta Babu was talking about the importance of judiciary, importance of significance of the judiciary steps, and he talked about the rights and duties of the Indian Constitution. And Devotos Babu already postulated the different kinds of the articles of the Indian Constitution, and I hope he already completed the fundamental rights of the Indian citizen and how we are enjoying the different kinds of the rights in the independence India. So it is very easy for me. I'm not repeating again that type of the articles already are in our constitution. I am trying to point out how first time, why rights, and what is the significance of the right, what is the importance of the rights. Lord Harold J. Lesky, one book was published in 1925. The name of his book was Grammar of Politics. You know very well. Every state is known by the rights that it maintains. It is the basic structure of the state, what he said. The state is to be known by the rights what it maintains, because the state is has the responsibility to maintain the rules and regulations, and also Similarly, Barker was talking about the rights. According to him, rights are those necessary conditions of the greatest possible development of capabilities of all individuals, which are secured and guaranteed by the state. Devotos Babu already talked about the different kinds of steps, different kinds of articles which are already secured and guaranteed in the Indian Constitution. So, we are aware about the Indian Constitution, aware about the Indian rights of the Indian people. And in a democratic country like India, role of the judiciary is very much important in this context. And judiciary administers the justice according to the law. What Devotees Babu already postulated his ideas according to the Indian Constitution. And different since Article 12 to 35, how the rights are being guaranteed and secured, and also how people are enjoying their rights. It is written. So it is required to promote the justice in the adjudicatory process. Credibility of the judiciary process ultimately depends on the manners of doing the administrators of the justice. So the judiciary can promote the social justice through its judgment. Otherwise, common people will suffer a lot if it is not secured, if it is not maintained by the government or the judiciary system or any kind of the organ of the state policy, because we are entering into the, and we are also living in the in our state on the basis of one kind of the contract, one kind of the agreement. Why we should obey the rules on law? Because we have made a contract, or we made an agreement with the state. What Hobbes was talking about it. Hobbes was talking about the state of nature, that is a hypothetical conditions of the human beings before and without the political association. The notion of state was essential element of the social contract theory. And several kinds of the argument, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau was talking about the justified limits of the political authority, delimits of the political authority on grounds of the individual self-interest and the rational consent. By comparing the advantage of the organized government with the supposed disadvantage of the state of nature, they showed why and under what conditions government is useful. Under what conditions government is ought therefore to be accepted by all reasonable people as a voluntary obligation, because without obligation the law cannot be applicable, the law cannot be applied. The conclusions are then deduced the form of the social contract in this regard, from which it was supposed that all essential rights and duties of the citizen could be logically deduced or constructed. And Hobbes famously stated about the condition of the state of nature that the state of nature is a solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, short, And only the law that exists the state of nature are not the covenants for between the people, but principle based on the self-preservation, what Hobbes calls first law of nature. And this is the beginning. That's why rights are necessary. That's why every individual in effect says every other, I confirm my rights of governing myself to the sovereign if you do too. The transfer is collectively entered into only on the understanding that it makes one less of the target of the attack of or any kind of the dispossession than one would be one's natural state. This is the fact of the state of nature. And apart from the Hobbesian idea and Hobbesian thought, what I am going to present here, the concept of how the Indian Constitution, it is the emergency, it is the original source of the rights, and Indian Constitution secures the justice to all citizens, apart from the securing the liberty, equality, promoting the fraternity. In the Indian democracy, the Supreme Court plays an important role of safeguarding and fundamental rights of the citizen, includes the providing their fair justice also. It is the most important and importance of the judiciary system in Indian democracy. Britain, we know about the Indian Constitution that is very much important, that it is this Constitution it's big Constitution, and it is protecting the rights of the human beings. It is protecting the rights of the individuals. It is protecting the individual rights. Written Constitution does not mean the security of our life. Written article is not protecting us, not only the protecting us, but judiciary implementation and judiciary system is protecting us from any kind of the threat. It may be from the perspective of state, it may be from the enemies outside of the state, and the state is responsible for the protection of the people. The objective of rights jurisprudence is to humanize the state agency, because state is laying the different kinds of the agencies for the restorations of the individual rights and individual citizenship rights. That's why we made an agreement to oblige the different kinds of the rules and regulations. What Devotas Babu was talking, the different kinds of rules and regulations in different articles. We are not violating the Indian Constitution, rules and regulations of the Indian Constitution, because of the judiciary system is the only the organization which can protect our rights, and it can secure ourselves from any kinds of the threat. So the objectivity, and it make the state accountable to the use of the power only for the public good. I remember that 1610, one Chief Justice of England, Court of Common Pleas. He, Edward, his name was Edward Koch. He told that the Benham case was held, and he told that the collective aim of the constitution of the government is the promotion of good quality of life. It is the role of judiciary to ensure the ends. Human rights demands the recognition. It respects for the inherent dignity to ensure that everyone is protected against the abuse which undermine their dignity. I am just introducing, I want to introduce that different kinds of the how, different kinds of the cases, how it protects our fundamental rights in Indian situation, in Indian, since independence of India, that human rights belongs to everyone, everywhere, regardless of the nationality, sexuality, or the gender, race, religion, and age. Foundation, actually, the foundation of modern human rights is the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, you know very well. The 30 article of the declaration was adopted in 1948 by United Nations General Assembly, and over the time these have been integrated into the national laws and the international treaties. Human rights are rights a person has simply because he or she is a human being. If you see, Immanuel Kant said that the human beings have the intrinsic value absent in the inanimate objects. To violate a human rights would therefore be a failure to recognize the worth of the human life. Most society have had the tradition similar to the golden rule of do unto others, or you would as you would have them to do unto you. If you see Hindu Veda, that Babylonian code of Hammurabi, and etc., address the question, the people's duties, people's right, people's responsibility. Quran, if you see, then it represents the people's duties. It represents the rights. It represents the responsibility. And also the constitution, it is the constitutional mandate of the judiciary to protect the rights of the citizen. Supreme Court of India are empowered to take the action to enforce these rights. What my previous resource persons was talking, and machinery for the address to provide the under the Article 32 and Article 226 of the Indian Constitution. An aggrieved person can directly approach the Supreme Court and High Court of the concerned state for the protection of his and her fundamental rights and redress of the grievances and enjoyment of the nature of the habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quarantine, and certiorari. What already said taught. Supreme Court, if you see the Supreme Court in Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, interpret the right of life and to widen its scope and reduce the unused rights such as the right to live with human dignity. Supreme Court propounded the theory of the emanation, to make the existence of the fundamental rights meaningful and active. Therefore, in many cases, quote, such People's Union for the Civil Liberties and another, the state of Maharashtra and others, Francis Caroline, and the administrator Union Territory of Delhi, held that right of life and right to life include the right to live with the human dignity. Therefore, through the judicial interpretation, the various types of rights have been recognized, though they are not specifically provided in the Part 3 of the Constitution. And several kinds of steps were taken. There are various types of the instance where the judiciary intervened and the rights of the children and rights of the citizen. The case, different types of the cases are there, and human rights are not conferred by any ruler, but or the constitution or the statute. Human beings are born with the human rights, giving the new dimension of the article. What say as I told, that Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Supreme Court in the cases noted Francis Cole and Union Territory of Delhi, Maneka Gandhi and Union of India. It was in 1978. And if you see that declare the right to life as granted under Article 21 is not merely confined to the physical existence, but it includes within its ambit the right to live with the human dignity. Right to live is not restricted mere the animal existence. It means something more than just the physical survival. The right to live is not confined to the protection of any faculty or line through which life is enjoyed and soul communicates with the outside of the world, but it also includes the right to live with the human dignity. It is the most important and factors for the Indian Constitution, for the judiciary system. Our judiciary system is emphasizing on the importance of the dignity of life. That is what Sir already mentioned in different article, different constitutional article also. And India, the largest democracy, is a signatory of the United UDHR and safeguard the civil rights. Is responsible for the economic and cultural and political social rights also. Indian Constitution saved the human rights from the peril in the form of the guarantees of the fundamental rights, such as the human rights. They are inherent by the birth. These rights cannot be amended, as it is a part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Through the Part 3 is enforceable, but not Part 4. Preamble of the Indian Constitution also talks about the protection of the dignity of the individual. Constitution directs the state to make the endeavors of the rights protection, human rights protection. Under the article, if you see, 5 read are in our Constitution. Under the Article 32, people can approach Supreme Court in order to avail the rights guaranteed under the Part 3. because these are the fundamental rights. Article 13 empowered the Supreme Court to declare that any law avoid if it is encroaches upon the Part 3. And because Supreme Court is the guardian of the Indian Constitution, and it validates the laws made by the government, and it has the power. That's why that is the court and judiciary system is more important and significant during this period of time. And since the independence, Supreme Court is the guardian of the Indian Constitution. So the legislature by law can empower any other court to protect these rights. In compliance with the Parliament has ordained the Protection of the Human Rights Act 1993, because this act provide the human rights means the right relating to the life, relating to the liberty, relating to the equality, relating to the dignity of the individual guaranteed by the Constitution and embodied in the International Convent and enforceable courts in India. The Act also directs to establish National Human Rights Commission, State Human Rights Commission, Human Rights Court. Different kinds of the steps were taken during this period of time. And Section 3 of the Protection of the Human Rights Act 1993 put an obligation of the establishment of the National Human Rights Commission in compliance with the central government, has constituted the National Human Rights Commission 1993. The Commission is obliged to protect and promote the human rights. In 1993, the Commission has issued the guideline regarding the custodial death of all the state government, that in case such accident, Commission must be informed within 24 hours. This will be followed with the postmortem report, and magisterial inquiry report, videography report of the postmortem, etc. And Section 36, if you see, then you can find Section 36/2 put some limitations on the Human Rights Commission, but Supreme Court in Premjit Kaur and State of Punjab construed the statutory provision that when the Supreme Court, by exercising its power under the Article 32, referred to the matter of the infringement of the human rights to the Commission, then the Section 32/2 cannot restrict Commission to act accordance with the order of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court already said in this case that Commission will be sui generis body to carry out the functions referred by the Supreme Court, and the body is not circumscribed by any sort of the conditions. In instant case, Supreme Court observed that no statutory provision can curtail the Supreme Court to exercise its power. There is no reason that why the Commission cannot comply with order of the Supreme Court to look into the matter of the violence of the human rights. Along with the Supreme Court, National Human Rights Commission make endeavor in the protection of the rights. These are the factors for the different types of the steps were taken during this period of time, and judiciary system is taking several types of steps in this situation. And Supreme Court's judiciary system, fundamental, if you see fundamental rights, different kinds of the steps are taken for the protection and promotion of the rights or the human rights. And if you see fundamental rights case, several kinds of the steps are taken. If you see the Kesavananda Bharati Mamla versus State of Kerala, this case was heard by the ever largest, the Constitution bench of the 13 judges. In the court has gifted the doctrine, the basic structure of the Constitution held that the principle is immovable, and accordingly the court outlined that the power to amend is not bottomless but limited. The case overruled Goloknath Mamla case. The court said that Parliament Act will be counted ultra vires if it tries to rewrite the whole constitution in the light of its power under the Article 368 of the Constitution. This view of the Supreme Court protects the rights fundamentally. What Sir talked about and touch this point. Just I am introducing the detail of the case, how the people are being protected by the judiciary, and what is the significant, and how the judiciary system is protecting the human rights in the state, in the democratic state of India. And another important idea, that is the most important, that I want to point out, that Shiva judiciary also required to create the laws that help in securing the rights of the people. Judiciary passes the judgment based on the proof presented in front of the judge, who then decides that what to do with the criminal. The government creates the law to maintain the country's regulation. Judiciary makes sure the people to follow. This is the important. And judiciary is considered to be the group of judges who play an important role in passing the correct judgment, protecting the rights of the citizen of a country. The judiciary sometimes needs to create the new laws to maintain the rights of the people when old laws became difficult to follow. Some laws are not required to be discarded. They are changed and upgraded according to the circumstances of the situation. So these are the factors. Rights are the basic rights and the freedoms that belongs to every person in the world. We are all equally committed to our human rights without discrimination. This is another important. That is the viewpoint of the judiciary system. In our country, judiciary is known as an independent part of the government. It is independent judiciary. Judiciary has two rules. That is the traditional rule that interprets the law, and judicial activism. But Sir told that to go beyond the status and exercise of the discretionary power to provide the justice. It plays both role in every well manner for the protection of the fundamental rights. Any individual whose fundamental rights have been violated can direct move to the court for his justice. And the Supreme Court and High Court can issue the writ to the government for the enforcement of the right. And that is the factors. If you see, then Jabalpur versus Shiv Shakti Shukla case, most important case. ADM Jabalpur versus Shiv Shakti Shukla case, 12. This case was a black spot in the Indian historical judgment. In this case, what happened? In this case, 4 out of 5 judges held that all fundamental rights will remain suspended during the emergency. Justice H.R. Khanna, you know his name, gave a dissent-based judgment which paved the way for the rule that the state cannot deprive any of the right of life, personal liberty without due process of law. That is the security of life. That is the protection of the right. That is the role of the judiciary. How the human rights are being protected and secured. The state and the government is responsible for the protection of the rights and the rights of the people. But court is taking some kinds of the decision. Court is more active in the Indian Constitution for the protection of the rights. Another important case, what I said, that personal liberty, regarding personal liberty, if you see Maneka Gandhi case, you know very well Maneka Gandhi case. Maneka Gandhi case, in present case, the court gave the wider interpretation of the word, the personal liberty. The court considered that depriving the people of a personal liberty requisites the Article 14. Article 19 must be fulfilled, as the Article 14 and 19 or 21 are incorporated, interconnected. This is the activity of the judiciary. This is the activity of the active role of the judiciary system. Sahabanu Mamla, if you see, the Supreme Court guaranteed the maintenance of the Sahabanu and protects the rights of the Muslim women beyond the personal law. But Muslim community consider that the verdict of the court encroaches the Muslim Sharia law. Therefore, Parliament ordinate all the Indian Muslim Personal Law Board 1973. Article 21, already sir told, 21 interpretation. That is, Apex Court has widely constructed the Article 21 word life. It is explained in watershed judgment of the US Supreme Court that life is something more than mere the animal existence. Supreme Court of India said that right of life is not mere the physical existence, but the right to life with the dignity. That is the fundamental rights which is maintained by the court. The Article 21 includes the non-payment of the wages to the worker will be the denial of the rights to live with the human dignity. Court held that sexual harassment at the workplace is the violation of the Article 14, Article 15, Article 21. Right to shelter, right to know, right to livelihood, right against the solitary confinement, right to free legal aid, right to health, right to privacy, etc. All these are appended as the inherent part of the Article 21 by the Apex Court while the exercising its power of interpretation. That is the factors of the Indian courts, and judiciary system is playing the significant role in this regard. Judiciary system, Supreme Court allowed the women's entry in the Sabarimala temple, 50 years subjected to the gender discrimination. And if you see that this is the rights of the people, so the different kinds of steps were taken by the judgment judiciary system in Indian Constitution. Supreme Court said that if you in the context of homosexuality, Supreme Court in the year 2018 discriminalized section 377 of the Indian Penal Code 1860 on the ground that it goes against the Article 14, Article 15, Article 19, Article 21 of the Constitution. This verdict of the Supreme Court only discriminalized the homosexuality under section 377. Rest of the law will remain the same. After 72 years, rights of the homosexual people is off the hook, and they can also enjoy their rights as the heterosexual people. Adultery. In the case of the adultery, Supreme Court said that husband is no more master of wife. Therefore, the pronounced the adultery is no more crime, as it violates the dignity of the woman, hence infringes Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. The court also elucidated that the adultery is still ground for the divorce, and it will be considered the criminal if it leads to the abatement of suicide or ulteriors could be persecuted under section 306 IPC 1860. So the most important criteria of the judiciary system is playing the important role during this period of time, and at present since the independence India. And there are various instances where the judiciary interfere in the different kinds of the cases. Judiciary is playing the crucial role for the protection of the right of the people from time, and again by expanding the scope of the rights and recognizing the new rights with the need of time. Judiciary has expanded the scope of rights of life to include the entitlements, which are vital for the enjoyment of the right of life and dignity. Courts have protected the right of people in numerous cases where the rights against the violation in custody to live in a pollution-free environment, right to health, right to adequate wages to the worker, the right of safety of the woman at the workplace, or compensation to wrap the victim, and different kinds of steps were taken during this period of time. And historic, if you see, if I want to summarize that type of the rights in the different kinds of the steps were taken by the judiciary in in the historic verdict shows that the judiciary made the endeavor for the protection and the promotion of the human rights. But we cannot say that it is infallible. However, it can be stated that the Supreme Court exercised its power of interpretation. So, well, it widened the scope of the rights, which made it more expeditious for the everyone to enjoy their rights in India. In India, judiciary is not the superior, but we have the constitutionalism, which involves that the judiciary is independent and all the bodies have to comply with the order of the Supreme Court for the welfare of the state. Our law directs the government to establish the certain organs for the protections of the right in the compliance with the National Human Rights Commission at the union level and the few states step up the State Human Rights Commission also. Law provides that the state should establish the district human rights commission, but there is this non-compliance with this regard. So the Supreme Court has directed that the state government to establish the State Human Rights Commission and the Human Rights Commission. However, most of the states not acted in the accordance with the same. But lacuna or effort of the state dilatory in serving the justice to the part of the society, as it is not easy for every person to approach the National Human Rights Commission from everywhere in the country in order to avail their rights. And the controversial point is that the law does not set forth a procedure of the Human Rights Commission to deal with such type of the compliance, and the Act does not mark the jurisdictions of such court regarding the defense of the violation. This ambition factor may be looked for the promptly by the lawmakers so that the vigilance for the protection provided to the human rights and the aftermath and already existed with the dismay and will not dismay. This is the fact. So the judicial system and judicial activism in India implies the authority to the Supreme Court and the High Court also, not the subordinate courts, to declare the regulations unconstitutional, avoid they can if they breach or if the legislation is incompatible with one or more constitutional case. So after independence, judicial activism almost the silent for the first decade, but the executive and the legislative organ of the government actively dominated and intervened in the working of the judiciary. But it was in 70s, Apex Court started viewing the judicial and the structural view of the Constitution. Already I told the Kesavananda Bharati Mamla, that is the most important, and emergence declare what I said, already said, the existence of rule of law in the Indian situation. Concept of judicial activism started gaining more power from there. And judiciary system interfered the different kinds of the steps in the works of legislative in the executive factors. So different types of steps were taken different circumstances. If you see the written of written of fundamental rights, that means the security of our life. It is not the fact. It is not the achievement of the liberty. Judiciary system is very much active in this regard for the protection of the rights in different years. If you see, because judiciary system, it is rights actually in India, rights were very much important, because India is a democratic country. During the freedom struggle, the freedom leaders of freedom movement have realized that type of the importance of the rights. Unique features of the Indian Constitution is that the large part of the human rights are named as the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights in Indian Constitution constitute the Magna Carta of the individual liberty and the human rights. Basically, Motilal Nehru, if you know, Motilal Nehru Committee has demanded the Bill of Rights as far back in 1928. It was therefore the natural rights. When India became independent, then the constitution was being prepared for the concept of the human right was accepted. And rights are the basic rights and the freedom that belongs to every person in the world. And injustice anywhere is threat to justice everywhere. This is the factor. I am repeating again before my end that injustice anywhere is the threat to justice everywhere. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my knowledge, share my experience of concept regarding the judiciary system and the activities of the judiciary system and different types of the steps which were taken during this period of time or the since our independence, and how judiciary system is active for the protections of the rights of the citizen. I am sharing this knowledge and sharing my experience. If you have any question, then you can ask me, and I am ready for the reply. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your valuable words, new kind of thought, and your experiences in this academics. Is there any question? It is open now. I don't think so. There is no question. Okay. Sir, there is no question. So we'll over this session here only. Thanks once again. And
thank you for
now,
your good anchoring. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have operated and executed all the programs timely. Just I have completed my lectures within my stipulated time.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you. Now I would request Shamul Paul.
Samuel is our student in our now he engaged in the college. Actually, I am belonging to the Mednipur. So
yes, I have seen your biodata.
Called me to give some ideas about the judiciary system. So I have given my consent to give the lecture. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to deliver the lecture in your program. I hope your program will be successful.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable time you have given to us. And it's time for giving the thanks. And I'll request Shamul Paul, the head of the Department Political Science, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Siddhartha Shankar Manna, my teacher, to respond my invitation and you deliver your important lecture on the topic of role of the Indian judiciary and the protection of citizens' rights. So, sir, your lecture was so important, and you have talked about the various steps taken by the judiciary for saving the um, rights of the citizens. And you also mentioned many cases as Sahabanu case, Maneka Gandhi case, others case. So your valuable lecture increase our knowledge and also improve the knowledge of the participants. Now I would like to thank at first the principal and chairperson of this webinar, who support us with his encouragement. And I also like to thank the JB president and chief patron of this webinar, uh, Mr. Suprakash Giri, who also support us to organize this program. And then I would like to thank Aishwarya ma'am to support us. She is the faculty member of history, Department of History in our college. And I would like to thank all the teachers, faculties of our college and non-teaching staff, and also the students who also support us. And at last, not the least, would like to thank the participants who are watching the program on YouTube, the students, faculties, scholars, and other participants from different part of India as well as from world. So thanks a lot to all of you. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll end this session, today's session, and the seminar will continue for other 2 more days, tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So we are requesting all of you to be present, to remain present there also. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, sir.